The entire restaurant went silent, not because someone dropped a plate, not because a famous face walked in, but because someone did the unthinkable. In the center of the private dining room, under the warm glow of crystal chandeliers, Miss Adele Stees, the billionaire heiress everyone whispered about, raised her voice sharp and cold, ready to humiliate another server like she always did. Everyone froze. The waiters, the busboys, the sommelier near the bar. Even the manager stopped moving for a moment. They all knew what was coming. Adele always destroyed someone when things weren't perfect. And tonight, nothing was perfect enough. But something strange happened. A voice cut through the tension. Not loudly, not desperately, but firmly like steel wrapped in silk. It was the new server, Maria. A quiet woman. A woman who started only 3 days ago. A woman nobody expected to even make eye contact. Talk less of speaking up when the most feared woman in the city was about to unleash her fury. But here she was, standing straight, refusing to lower her gaze. No, Maria said. Just one word. Simple. Final. Every person in that room gasped. Excuse me? What did you just say? Adele hissed, her perfectly painted face twisting in disbelief. But Maria didn't step back. Her posture stayed strong. Her voice stayed steady. And then, unknown to everyone, the man Adele had been courting, the dangerous Ford Castro himself, stood just inside the entrance, arriving for their date. He stopped walking. He heard the exchange. He turned his head slowly, his dark eyes narrowing with interest. Then he saw it. His stunning date, the woman who commanded rooms with her beauty and wealth, trying to break a server's spirit. And the server refusing to break. Ford didn't move. He didn't speak. He just watched, his mind turning sharp and cold because something inside him recognized a pattern he'd seen before. Predators revealed themselves when challenged. And the next words Adele spoke made everyone in the room understand just how venomous she could be. You have no idea who you're dealing with. You just ended your miserable little life, Adele said, her voice dripping with threat. But Maria's expression did not change. And Ford's interest had never been more dangerous. Adele Stees's penthouse sat on top of the city like a crown made of glass and gold. 40 floors above the noise, above the ordinary people, above consequences. Inside, everything gleamed. Marble floors reflected chandeliers worth more than most people's homes. Paintings from dead artists hung on walls whiter than fresh snow. Every surface screamed wealth. Every corner whispered power. But the 12 people who worked there knew the truth. Beauty had teeth. Miss Stees likes her coffee at exactly 160 degrees, the head housekeeper, Rosa, whispered to Maria on her first morning. Not 159. Not 161. Exactly 160. She will know the difference. Rosa's hands shook slightly as she spoke. And never look her in the eye unless she asks you a direct question. Survival here means becoming invisible. Maria nodded, watching the other staff move like ghosts through the luxury. Silent, careful, afraid. That same afternoon, Adele held a business lunch in the main dining room. She laughed like music, smiled like sunlight, charmed 3 investors until they practically begged to give her their money. She wore a cream silk dress that cost more than Maria would make in a year. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect performance. The moment the door closed behind them, the smile died. This wine is warm, Adele said quietly, too quietly. She threw the glass against the wall. Red liquid dripped down like blood. Do I pay you people to embarrass me? No one answered. No one moved. Then Ford Castro called. Rosa answered, her voice suddenly bright with forced cheerfulness. Yes, Mr. Castro. Miss Stees would be delighted to see you this evening. When Rosa hung up, she looked terrified and relieved at once. He's coming. The Korean businessman. The one everyone says is connected to those people. She looked at Maria. When he's here, she becomes someone else. Someone sweeter. Remember that. Remember everything is a performance. Maria remembered. She remembered too well. Ford Castro arrived at 8 o'clock exactly, dressed in a burgundy suit that made him look like old money mixed with new danger. His neck tattoo crawled just above his collar, a reminder that polish couldn't hide everything. He handed his coat to Maria without looking at her. Invisible, just like Rosa said. Adele floated down the stairs in gold. She moved like honey, talked like silk. Ford, you're always so punctual. It's rare to find a man who values time as much as he values power. They sat in the private lounge, drinking wine that cost more per bottle than most people's rent. Maria served in silence, pouring, removing plates, existing without existing. But she listened. Your shipping routes through Busan, Adele said, leaning forward just enough. I could triple your efficiency with my distribution networks. Imagine what we could build together. Ford's dark eyes studied her. You're not just beautiful, you're strategic. Dangerous combination, only to people who underestimate me. She smiled, and it looked genuine. Perfect. Maria moved toward the kitchen, but stopped at a sound. A crash. Shouting. She turned to see Adele's longtime butler, Mr. Harrison, standing in the hallway holding broken pieces of a crystal decanter. His hands trembled. Adele's voice dropped to ice. 42 years my family employed you. 42 years, and you repay us by destroying a piece worth more than your pathetic pension. She stood slowly. You're finished. Get out. Tonight. Miss Stees, please, it was an accident. Get out. Mr. Harrison's eyes filled with tears. He looked around desperately. Every staff member turned away. Everyone except Maria. She stared directly at Adele, her jaw tight, her expression clear. Disgust. Ford noticed. His gaze shifted from the sobbing old man to the young maid who refused to look away. Interesting. Very interesting. Adele returned to the lounge, smile restored. Now, where were we? 3 weeks later, Ford returned for dinner. This time, Adele planned something special. A private celebration of their potential partnership. Champagne from France. Caviar from Russia. Presentation perfect enough to photograph. Maria carried the champagne tray through the dining room, steady and careful. But Rosa, rushing past with dessert plates, bumped her shoulder. Not hard, just enough. The bottle tilted. Champagne splashed across the white tablecloth, golden liquid spreading like a stain on Adele's perfect evening. The room went cold. Adele stood slowly, her chair scraping against marble. Every staff member froze in place. The cooks, the servers, the sommeliers. They knew this silence. They'd learned to fear it. You clumsy, worthless. Adele's voice started low, then rose like a wave building before it crashes. Do you have any idea what that champagne cost? Do you? She moved toward Maria, her heels clicking like a countdown. Look at this mess. Look at what you've done to my table, my evening, everything. Maria's voice came quiet but clear. It was an accident. An accident? Adele laughed, sharp and cruel. An accident is what stupid people call their incompetence. She stepped closer, invading Maria's space. You're fired. Pack your things and get out of my home. Maria didn't move, didn't drop her eyes. No. The entire room held its breath. What did you just say to me? I said no. Maria's voice stayed level. It was an accident. A real one. And you know it. But you want someone to hurt because you're angry about something else entirely. I won't be that person. Adele's face twisted. Her hand rose, fingers curled like claws, ready to strike. Everyone knew what came next. They'd all seen it before, felt it before. But Maria didn't flinch. She just stood there, eyes locked on Adele's, refusing to give her the satisfaction of fear. That's when Ford spoke from the doorway. Is everything all right here? His voice was casual, but his eyes were sharp. He'd been watching from the entrance, delayed by a phone call. He'd seen everything. Adele's transformation was instant. The rage melted into concern, the violence into vulnerability. Oh, Ford, I'm so sorry you had to see this. She pressed her hand to her chest. I've been under so much stress lately. The merger talks, the pressure. I shouldn't have raised my voice. She glanced at Maria with manufactured regret. I apologize. That was inappropriate. Maria said nothing, but Ford saw it. The way Adele's mask slipped on and off like a costume. The way every staff member had backed against the walls like prey animals. The way Maria stood alone in the center of the room, the only person who hadn't cowered. Perhaps we should reschedule, Ford said quietly, still watching Maria. Give you time to rest. After he left, he sat in his car for 10 minutes, thinking. Then he made a call. Run a background check. Complete history. I want to know everything about Adele Stees. Inside the penthouse, Rosa pulled Maria aside. You should leave tonight, before she makes you disappear. But Maria shook her head. I'm not going anywhere, not yet. Ford found Maria 2 days later at a coffee shop 6 blocks from the penthouse. She wasn't surprised to see him. She'd left her number with his driver, wrapped in a note that said only 3 words, "We should talk." He sat across from her, expensive suit looking out of place in the worn vinyl booth. "You're either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both." Maria slid a manila folder across the table. "My real name is Maria Santos. I wasn't hired by Adele. I was hired by the family of Marcus Chen." Ford opened the folder. Inside, photographs, documents, bank statements, and a face he recognized, a tech entrepreneur who'd jumped from his office building 18 months ago. The news called it depression. The market called it tragic. Marcus Chen met Adele at a charity gala, Maria said quietly. 3 months later, they were engaged. 6 months after that, his company's patents were somehow transferred to shell corporations she controlled. His investors abandoned him. His reputation was destroyed by rumors of fraud that couldn't be proven but wouldn't die. He left a note before he jumped. It said, "She took everything." Ford's jaw tightened. He turned the pages. More faces. More stories. David Rodriguez, real estate developer, engaged to Adele for 4 months. Left bankrupt, his properties seized for debts he swore he never signed for. He's homeless now, living in his car. Maria pointed to another photo. James Park, hedge fund manager. She got access to his client list, his strategies, his vulnerabilities. When she was done, the SEC was investigating him for insider trading. He lost his license, lost his family. Last I heard, he was drinking himself to death in Atlantic City. 3 men, Ford said slowly. 3 successful men, all destroyed. 3 that we know of. Maria met his eyes. Marcus's sister hired me. She's a lawyer. She suspected but couldn't prove anything. So she sent me inside to gather evidence. I've been documenting everything for 2 months. The burner phones. The secret meetings with lawyers. The way she studies people like she's taking notes for an exam. Ford closed the folder. His hands were steady, but his mind was racing. He thought about the business proposal. The way Adele asked specific questions about his operations. The document she'd asked him to sign, just a preliminary agreement, nothing binding. He'd almost signed it yesterday. "She's already started the process with you, hasn't she?" Maria asked. He nodded slowly. "I thought I was the predator in this relationship. Everyone thinks that, until they're not." Maria leaned forward. "She knows you're investigating her now. The background check you ordered? She has people inside every agency in this city. She knows." Ford's phone buzzed. A text from Adele. "Missing you. Dinner tonight? I have a surprise." He showed Maria the screen. She didn't smile. "The trap is closing, Mr. Castro. Question is, are you going to walk into it, or are we going to set one of our own?" Ford found David Rodriguez living in a Toyota Camry parked behind a 7-Eleven in Newark. The man who once owned 3 apartment complexes and a beach house in the Hamptons now kept his entire life in a backseat filled with trash bags and old newspapers. "I'm not interested in talking about her," David said through a cracked window, his voice rough from cigarettes and despair. Ford held up $10,000 cash. 5 minutes. That's all I need. David took the money. He talked for an hour. She was perfect at first. Laughed at my jokes. Remembered small things, like how I took my coffee or my mother's birthday. Made me feel seen, you know? His hands shook as he lit another cigarette. Then she started asking about my business. Casual questions. Who were my partners? Where did I keep my important documents? What banks did I use? I thought she was just interested in my life. When did things change? After I gave her access to my home office. Said she wanted to surprise me by organizing my files. David laughed bitterly. 3 weeks later, documents I'd never seen before showed up in court. Contracts with my signature on them. Debts to offshore companies I'd never heard of. My lawyer said the signatures were real. Forensic analysis confirmed it, but I never signed them. I swear to God, I never signed them. Ford's blood went cold. How? I don't know. Maybe when I was drunk. Maybe she drugged me. Maybe she's just that good at forgery. All I know is 6 months after I met her, I lost everything. And she walked away with my best properties transferred to shell companies I couldn't trace. Ford found James Park in Atlantic City, like Maria said, at a casino bar at 2 in the afternoon. The former hedge fund manager looked 20 years older than his 45 years. She studies you, James said, already half drunk. Takes mental notes of everything. Your habits, your weaknesses, your fears. I have a daughter with special needs. Adele met her once, spent an hour playing with her, acting like she cared. 2 months later, when I tried to end things, she threatened to expose private medical records that would have destroyed my daughter's future. Records she should never have had access to. Where did she get them? I don't know, but she gets everything. Every secret. Every vulnerability. It's like she has a network of people feeding her information. Lawyers, doctors, government officials. She collects leverage the way some people collect art. Ford visited Marcus Chen's sister last. Attorney Grace Chen worked from a small office in Chinatown, still trying to piece together what happened to her brother. Look at this. She spread documents across her desk. Every man Adele destroyed followed the same pattern. First, the whirlwind romance. Second, the integration into their professional lives. Third, the strategic questions masked as intimacy. Fourth, the legal documents signed under pressure or influence. Fifth, the systematic transfer of assets. Sixth, the exposure or scandal that destroys their credibility. And finally, the exit, clean and complete. Ford stared at the timeline. He thought about the preliminary partnership agreement Adele had prepared. The one that gave her access to his shipping manifests, his distribution routes, his contact lists. The one he'd almost signed. She's been studying my organization for weeks, he said quietly. Asking about my operations, my partners, my security protocols. Grace nodded grimly. Then you're already in stage 3. Maybe stage 4. The question is, how far will you let it go? Ford thought about the business merger Adele proposed. The way she'd casually mentioned his rivals, his suppliers, his vulnerabilities. The way she'd asked about his mother's medical history, his childhood in Seoul, his path into the business he ran now. She wasn't building a relationship. She was building a file. And he'd handed her half the pages himself. The contract arrived in a leather portfolio, delivered by Adele's personal lawyer. 300 pages of legal language that boiled down to one thing: complete access. Ford would merge his shipping operations with her distribution network, sharing routes, contacts, and most importantly, his list of suppliers and clients across Asia. It's brilliant, really, Adele said over dinner at her penthouse. She wore red tonight, the color of confidence. Your infrastructure, my capital. We'd control half the import market within a year. She reached across the table, her fingers trailing along his hand. And imagine what else we could build together. Ford smiled, playing the part. It's ambitious. I'll need a few days to review with my people. Of course. But her eyes flickered with something cold. Impatience, maybe, or suspicion, though I'd hoped you trusted me by now. Trust is earned slowly in my business. You understand. She understood too well. That night, after Ford left, Adele made a call. The maid, Maria Santos. I need her background checked. Everything. Who hired her, where she came from, why she's really here. Maria was washing dishes when Rosa grabbed her arm. She's asking questions about you. Serious ones. The kind that end with people disappearing. Rosa's voice shook. Please, leave tonight. I've seen what she does to threats. But Maria stayed. She had a job to finish. Ford meanwhile met with Grace Chen and her private investigator. The merger contract is a trap, Grace explained, highlighting sections. See this clause? It gives her power of attorney over your assets during transition periods. And this one? It allows her to make emergency decisions if you're incapacitated or unavailable. She's building the legal framework to take everything. Incapacitated, Ford repeated. You think she'd go that far? Marcus thought she was just ambitious until he woke up in a hospital with no memory of the previous 3 days and contracts signed in his name. David thought she was passionate until he started having dizzy spells and blackouts. By the time they realized something was wrong, it was too late. Ford's phone buzzed. A message from one of his men who'd been watching the penthouse. Security footage shows maintenance worker entering service elevator at 2 a.m. No record of scheduled maintenance. Man left 20 minutes later. Checked the elevator this morning, someone tampered with the brake cable. Looks like Maria's elevator. The one only staff use. Ford's jaw clenched. He called Maria immediately. Don't use the service elevator. Don't go near it. In fact, don't go back to the penthouse at all. She's making her move, Maria said quietly. She was in her small apartment, documents spread across her bed. I found something today. A burner phone hidden in her office. Text messages to someone called the cleaner. They're planning something for tomorrow night during the charity gala. Something involving you. What kind of something? I don't know yet. But one message said, make sure he signs before the incident. Another said, no traces this time. Ford's mind worked fast. The charity gala. The 100 witnesses who'd see him and Adele together, happy, committed. The contract she'd been pushing him to sign. And somewhere in the evening, an incident. Probably something that would leave him vulnerable, compromised, or worse. We need more evidence, Grace said when Ford called her. Something concrete that proves intent. Otherwise, it's just circumstantial. Then we give her what she wants, Ford said slowly. We let her think the trap is working. We let her make her move. But we'll be ready. Maria's voice came through the phone, clear and certain. You're using yourself as bait. I've been bait before. Difference is, this time I know I'm swimming with sharks. He paused. But I need you at that gala, Maria. Inside, with access. Can you do that? I'm still employed, aren't I? At least until the elevator kills me. That elevator is locked down now. Security found the tampering. Adele will know someone interfered. Ford's voice went cold. Which means tomorrow night, she'll be desperate. And desperate predators make mistakes. Or they get more dangerous, Maria said. Then we better be ready for both. The night before the gala, Adele invited Ford to her private office. Not the penthouse. Not a restaurant. Her real office, the one in the building downtown where she kept her actual business operations. The invitation itself was a message, she was done playing games. Ford arrived at midnight. The building was empty except for security, who waved him through without checking ID. They knew who he was. Or they'd been told to let him pass. Either way, it felt like walking into a cage. Adele sat behind a glass desk, backlit by the city lights. She didn't smile, didn't pretend. I know you've been digging into my past, Ford. Talking to my former associates. Meeting with Marcus Chen's grieving sister. Even tracking down poor David in his sad little car. Ford stayed calm, his face giving nothing away. Due diligence. You'd do the same. Of course I would. In fact, I already have. She opened a folder, slid it across the desk. Your shipping routes don't just move electronics and textiles, do they? Container 4721 last month. Container 8856 the month before. Should I continue? Ford's blood went cold. The containers held weapons, moved through channels that couldn't be traced back to him. Or so he thought. You're not the only one with investigators, Adele said softly. I have documentation, photographs, testimony from dock workers who can be very convincing under the right circumstances. One phone call, Ford, and your entire operation ends. You'll spend the next 20 years in a federal prison. So this is blackmail. This is reality. She stood, walked around the desk, perched on the edge near him. You and I aren't that different. We both built empires in the shadows. We both understand that power requires sacrifice. What I'm proposing is simple. Stop fighting me and start working with me. Real partnership. Not the kind that ends with betrayal. You mean marriage. I mean survival. Yours and mine. Her voice dropped, intimate and dangerous. Marry me, merge our operations completely, and I bury this evidence forever. We become untouchable together. Or refuse, and I destroy you the way I destroyed the others. Except you're not some soft businessman, Ford. You're dangerous. Which means I can't leave loose ends. Ford stood, met her eyes. If I agree, how do I know you won't use that evidence later? Because we'll have something better than trust. We'll have mutually assured destruction. You'll learn all my secrets, I'll keep all of yours. Perfect balance. He appeared to consider it, his face unreadable. Finally, he nodded slowly. I'll sign the merger documents at the gala tomorrow. We'll announce the engagement there too. Public commitment. Adele smiled, victorious. I knew you'd see reason. One condition. Maria stays employed. No accidents. No disappearances. The maid? Adele laughed. Fine. Though I don't understand your sudden concern for the help. Call it insurance. If anything happens to her, our deal is off. After Ford left, Adele made a call. Change of plans. The incident tomorrow needs to happen after he signs, not before. And make it look natural. no suspicions. In his car, Ford removed the recording device from his jacket lining. Every word captured, every threat documented. He sent the file to Grace Chen with a message. Tomorrow night, we end this. The charity gala filled the grand ballroom with Manhattan's elite. Crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, champagne towers that sparkled like liquid gold. Adele arrived on Ford's arm, stunning in emerald silk, playing the role of the perfect couple for 300 witnesses. Maria worked the event in a server's uniform, invisible among dozens of staff. But tonight, she carried more than champagne. In her pocket, a USB drive. In her earpiece, Grace Chen's voice giving her positions and timing. Ladies and gentlemen, the host announced at 9 o'clock, we have a special surprise this evening. Mr. Ford Castro and Miss Adele Stees have an announcement. Adele's smile was radiant as they walked to the stage. Ford held the merger documents, the ones that would give her everything. She thought she'd won, thought the trap had closed perfectly. Ford took the microphone. Thank you all for being here tonight. Adele and I do have an announcement, but it's not the one she's expecting. Adele's smile froze. 3 months ago, I met a remarkable woman. Beautiful, intelligent, powerful. But I've learned something important about power. Real power doesn't hide behind lies. He gestured to the screens around the ballroom. What you're about to see is the truth about how Adele Stees built her empire. The screens lit up. Bank statements, forged documents, text messages from the burner phone, photos of Marcus Chen's suicide note, David Rodriguez's bankruptcy filing, James Park's destroyed career. Adele grabbed for the microphone. This is absurd. This is Maria Santos, Ford interrupted as Maria walked onto the stage, no longer invisible, no longer silent. She's been documenting your activities for 8 months. Working for Marcus Chen's family. Gathering evidence while you planned to destroy me the same way you destroyed him. Maria's voice came clear and steady through the speakers. I watched her abuse her staff. Threaten them, control them through fear. But that was just the surface. Underneath, there's a pattern. She targets powerful men, gains their trust, accesses their vulnerabilities, and systematically destroys them while stealing their assets. The crowd murmured, phones coming out, recording everything. Then Grace Chen walked on stage with 3 people. David Rodriguez, cleaned up in a borrowed suit. James Park, sober for the first time in months. And Marcus Chen's elderly mother, holding her son's photograph. My son was a good man, Mrs. Chen said, her voice shaking but strong. He built his company from nothing. Then he met her. 6 months later, he was dead. She took everything from him. Everything from us. David stepped forward. I lost my home, my business, my dignity. I thought I was crazy. Thought I'd made mistakes I couldn't remember. But I didn't. She manufactured my destruction. James's testimony was simple. She threatened my daughter. A child with special needs. Used her as leverage to control me. That's who Adele Stees really is. Adele's face had gone pale, then red, then something beyond color. You can't prove any of this. It's all circumstantial. Lies from bitter failures who can't accept. Your lawyer is here, Ford said quietly. Richard Morrison. He's been cooperating with federal investigators for the last 72 hours. Turns out he kept copies of everything. Insurance, he called it. On cue, Morrison stood from the audience. I'm sorry, Adele, but I'm not going to prison for you. Then her accountant stood. The SEC has been very interested in those shell corporations. Very interested. One by one, her business partners, her associates, the people she thought she controlled through fear and leverage, they stood and stepped away from her. Rats leaving a sinking ship. Ford held up the merger documents, then slowly tore them in half. You gave me a choice last night. Marriage or destruction. Tonight, I'm giving you one. You can face the justice system, cooperate, maybe get 15 years instead of 30. Or, his voice dropped, dangerous and cold, you can face me. And the people I represent don't believe in courtrooms. Adele looked around the ballroom. 300 phones recording, dozens of witnesses, her victims standing together, her empire crumbling in real time. Security moving toward the stage. You think you've won, she hissed at Ford. You think this is over. No, Maria said quietly from beside him. We know it's over. The question is whether you accept it with dignity or they drag you out in handcuffs. Two federal agents appeared at the stage entrance. Behind them, NYPD detectives. Adele Stees, who had destroyed so many with her calculated cruelty, stood frozen in the spotlight with nowhere left to run. For the first time in her life, she was truly powerless. And 300 people watched her fall. The federal agents led Adele away in handcuffs at 10:47 p.m. No perp walk for the cameras, no dramatic scene. Just a quiet exit through the service entrance while the gala continued in shocked whispers upstairs. Even in her arrest, she tried to maintain control, walking with her head high, her emerald dress trailing behind her like a funeral shroud. By morning, the news had spread everywhere. Cable networks ran the footage on loop. Social media exploded with think pieces about privilege and predators. The headlines wrote themselves: billionaire heiress exposed as serial fraudster. Manhattan's most eligible turns out most criminal. The Black Widow of Wall Street. Within 48 hours, federal prosecutors had frozen her assets. The penthouse, the cars, the offshore accounts, all seized pending investigation. Her business partners filed emergency motions to separate their holdings from hers. Her board of directors voted unanimously to remove her from every position she held. The empire she'd built on ruins collapsed faster than any of her victims had. Ford made sure Maria and the household staff were protected first. He hired Grace Chen to represent them, paid for their legal fees, secured their testimony agreements. Rosa received 6 months severance and a reference letter that would open any door. The other staff members got similar packages, plus connections to legitimate employment far from Adele's shadow. "You didn't have to do this," Maria said when Ford handed her an envelope containing far more than she'd earned. "Yes, I did. You risked everything while I was still trying to figure out if I was the hunter or the prey." He smiled slightly. "Turns out neither of us were. We were just people trying to survive a predator." 3 weeks later, Ford visited Adele at the detention center. She'd requested the meeting through her lawyer, claiming she had information he'd want. He doubted it, but curiosity, and something else, something like closure, made him agree. She looked different without the armor of wealth. No makeup, no designer clothes, just an orange jumpsuit and the stripped-down version of herself. Still beautiful, but human now. Breakable. "Why did you come?" she asked. "Same reason you asked. Unfinished business." They sat across from each other, a table and a lifetime of choices between them. Adele studied him for a long moment. "You could have joined me. We would have been unstoppable together. Instead, you chose to destroy me for what? Justice? Revenge? Some moral high ground?" Ford leaned back, his expression unreadable. "You asked me once what I valued. I said loyalty. You thought that meant loyalty to power, to success, to winning. But loyalty works both ways. It's earned, not taken. That's not an answer." "Yes, it is. You built everything on fear and control. You thought that was power. But real power doesn't need to break people to prove itself. It doesn't fear the truth." He met her eyes. "The moment I saw Maria stand up to you, I understood something. Courage isn't about being the strongest person in the room. It's about being the one who refuses to look away when everyone else does." Adele laughed bitterly. "So the maid who said, no, taught the big bad mafia boss about courage. How poetic." "She did. And Marcus Chen's mother taught me about grief. David Rodriguez taught me about resilience. You taught me what happens when intelligence serves only itself." Ford stood. "You asked why I chose justice over power. Wrong question. Justice is power. The kind that lasts. I'll be out in 15 years with good behavior. Maybe less. Maybe. But you'll never be who you were. And everyone will remember why." He left her there, sitting alone in the gray room, finally facing the price of all those years of silence she'd enforced on others. Maria had moved to a small apartment in Brooklyn, started working as a paralegal in Grace Chen's office. Ford stopped by one afternoon with coffee and news. David got his real estate license back. James is teaching finance at a community college, 2 years sober. Mrs. Chen is suing Adele's estate for wrongful death. They'll win. Maria smiled. "Good. That's good. You changed everything, you know. One word, one moment of courage. I just did what was right. Most people don't. That's what makes it courage." Ford handed her an envelope. "One more thing. Inside is a letter of recommendation and a business proposal. I'm starting a legitimate import company. Clean operation. I need people I can trust. People who know how to say no when something's wrong. Maria opened it, read the offer, looked up in surprise. You're serious? Completely. Turns out you can't build anything real on lies. Took me 38 years and a maid with more courage than sense to figure that out. She laughed, and it sounded like hope. 6 months later, the penthouse was sold at auction. New owners moved in, painted the walls, replaced the memories. The staff scattered to better lives, carrying their stories but no longer defined by them. And Ford Castro, the man who'd spent his life in shadows, learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is step into the light and tell the truth, even when, especially when, it costs everything. Because true power, he finally understood, doesn't fear the truth. It becomes it.